lucky to have Dr. Kavita Pallod and Brahmachari Soham here with us. Dr. Kavita Pallod is the founder of KPS Psychotherapy, a private practice focused on providing psychotherapeutic services to the South Asian community. Dr. Seksaria's doctoral dissertation, Hindu-Indian American Conceptions of Mental Health, is focused on unpacking how understanding a Hindu worldview of mental health can enable greater access to mental health care by the underserved Hindu American population. Dr. Seksaria is particularly dedicated to destigmatizing spiritual means for coping in the therapeutic space. Dr. Seksaria also serves on the Hindu American Foundation's Board of Directors, supporting the Foundation's education and advocacy mission. Brahmachari Soham Chaitanya ji was born in a spiritual family devoted to Chinmaya mission. The opportunity to listen to satsangs from various swamis and brahmacharis introduced him to spirituality from a very young age. An engineer by background, Sohamji worked as a research engineer in Colorado after graduating with a master's degree from the University of California, Berkeley. Listening to the Bhagavad Gita, discourses by Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda ji, and Ramayana courses by Pujya Guruji Tejomayananda ji brought him to Sandeepani Sadhanalaya in Mumbai. Prior to joining Sandeepani in 2017, Sohamji served at Chinmaya Mission Centers in San Jose, California, facilitating youth and adult study groups. Sohamji loves playing the harmonium, singing bhajans, and dwelling on the scriptures, which talk about the nature of happiness. Thank you both for joining us today. So let's open, yes. So let us open our discussion by Sohamji. If you could share a little bit about your background and your work related to mental well-being.
Thank you, Anjali ji, for that warm introduction. I come from an organization, Chinmaya Mission, where we have programs for different age groups. Particularly for youth, our founder, Swami Chinmayanand, he would say, first of all, he had a lot of love and hope from the youth. The program that he envisioned for youth is called as Chinmaya YUVA Kendra, ages 18 through 35. And Swamiji would say, generally we hear youth are careless. Some go to the extreme of saying no use of telling anything to them. He would say, youth are not careless, they are cared less. They are used less. And keeping that in mind, he gave a framework where we meet every week and we study about our Hindu scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, in a language that youth can resonate and apply in their everyday life. So that is the basis that we work with. That is mostly part of our Chinmaya YUVA Kendra. We do have other programs which are also focused on overall well-being, like mental health, physical well-being in terms of yogasana, and so on. But I'm very inspired to see all of you here and really appreciate all the good work that our Hindu Yuva is doing.
Great. Kavita ji, can you share a little bit about your background in psychology and mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take a step back, though, and say thank you again for the honor of being here and the honor of being able to chat with all of you about something that I care so deeply about, right? So to understand my journey to getting my PsyD in clinical psychology, I always start with the fact that I'm the oldest daughter of 2 immigrant parents. And that's had an immense impact on me because while I'm really grateful for the way that I was brought up and the opportunities I was given to do seva, I always had a sense that a lot of people in my family were struggling more than they had to. and that they didn't recognize that there's more help out there than they could access at the time, especially again as the oldest daughter and as with everything that comes with that. So, I went to the University of Texas at Austin, like hook 'em horns if my fellow Longhorns are out there, and I got a degree in psychology, but I also got a degree in education, and I thought I wanted to be a teacher for some time because I didn't see myself going back to grad school. But it was really hard, and that's honestly a part of my journey, is that I was not cut out to be a teacher, and I had to figure things out again. And so I ended up at Rutgers to get my PsyD, and got my PsyD in clinical psychology, and had the amazing opportunity to work in a beautiful program that really helped me understand what it was going to be like to work with our community and with people outside of our community, and to be able to start to develop this niche in making a space in therapy to understand how, for so many people, Hindu Americans, of course, but I found that like a lot of my clients who are not Hindu also see that being able to access their spirituality is a huge part of their healing, and having a therapeutic space that recognizes that and allows them to tap into that is really beautiful. So that's how I ended up where I am right now, where I have the honor and the joy of working with a number of Hindu Americans, especially second generation Hindu Americans like myself, and helping them access the very best parts of themselves.
That's beautiful, and I can hear you bring a lot of not only academic knowledge, but practical clinical experience. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more in detail. What do you think are the most pressing mental health challenges that students are facing on campus today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was, just finishing up 2 books that I highly recommend for everyone. One is The Coddling of the American Mind, and the other is The Anxious Generation. Both are by Jonathan Haidt, and they make this really strong case that Gen Z is the most anxious and depressed generation that we've seen. And there are so many reasons for that. It's not Gen Z themselves, it's the world that we've created, everyone that came before you, right? Social media is obviously taking a toll. It can certainly have a lot of positive impact, but it does this thing where it makes us think we're connected, and we're not actually getting the time to spend in person, connecting with people one-to-one the way that we need. As human beings, we've evolved to just need that connection. And so just recognizing the impact social media has had on us is really important. And that ties into so many other things, right? I think a lot of us in this room have probably felt that our parents are more protective in some ways than their own parents were. And that can put us in a place in college to struggle with things as they feel really new. And so I think being able to have more open communication about what a life in college actually looks like, whether we're talking about dating or substance use, or what it means to actually be in a class with people with a lot of different beliefs than we have, is really, really key to getting to college and feeling equipped to handle it. So there's that. There's social media has made us all more rigid in how we think. There's the fact that if we ourselves are strong, but everyone around us is struggling, that absolutely impacts us. Depression is contagious in some ways. Happiness is also contagious, but it's just how we've evolved that depression is more contagious than happiness is. And so recognizing kind of what environment we're putting ourselves in and what we're surrounding ourselves with is so important. And the last thing I'll say is that one thing I really appreciate about Jonathan Haidt, he's an atheist himself, but he's been able to do all this research on saying we are the most detached spiritually we've ever been, and that absolutely ties to why we're feeling more anxious and depressed. There is something, like, if you want to say that God has created us to feel this way, or whether you want to say that we've evolved to have God-sized holes in our heart, the fact is that we are at our best when we understand how to transcend ourselves, to look beyond our individual needs and connect to something bigger than us, which of course is why it's like phenomenal. You guys are already in better position just being in this room, but you also have to leave this space and go back to a world that's kind of systemically working against you in some ways because of all of these reasons.
Yeah, you've touched on a very important topic, spirituality. So, Sohamji, we wanted to hear a little bit more from your views, from your point of view, from a Dharmic perspective. What do you think are the root causes of mental health issues, especially amongst all of our campus youth?
Thank you, Kavita ji, for those insights. When I work with many of our Balvihar children, when they graduate into universities, they share with me different experiences that they are having there. And one boy shared something very interesting, which I still remember. He said, while I went to university, I was one of the best in my school. But when I went there, I realized there are 5,000 bests competing with each other. And that is something which is very subtle, what we otherwise call as peer pressure. And the one who knows to handle it can gracefully come out of it. But if you were to point out several reasons, out of the many reasons, I would put this at the top, or at least one of the top reasons. Nowadays, they have a term called as imposter syndrome. Have you all heard about it? Means even if you're good, even if you are doing your things diligently, still one part of the mind self-doubts. Am I doing it right? And sometimes, life is something where reality strikes, and there are disappointments, there are failures, either at school, academically, or even in personal life with relationships. Knowing how to gracefully deal with failure is what our dharma teaches us. Not only how to handle success, but whenever we are having the downs in life, how can we hold on to God? How can we hold on to some higher power that we can come out of it? Not having that support, I would say, can become a cause for a lot of disturbance in the mind. I would say those two are the main ones.
Beautiful, yes, holding on to that higher power. Kavita ji, can you shed some light on the scientific standpoint? Maybe leaning into your clinical experience and knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're seeing higher rates of depression, we're seeing higher rates of anxiety. We have very clear research at this point that going through puberty with social media impacts all of this. We also have the research that people are feeling more disconnected from each other even as the world is at their tips. And so, the conclusions of like what we need can be so simple. We need more unstructured time to play as children, which has really gone down in this country in particular. And we need more time to like have the one-on-one social connections we need. And then the third, again, science-based, evidence-based thing that we're recognizing we need is more chances to be a part of a community and be a part of something that's bigger than us in order to address those challenges that we're facing.
Great. So moving into what I think many of us must be wondering is these solutions, these strategies. So how do you think these dharmic approaches and these scientific approaches can complement each other? And where do you think perhaps they might differ, if there are areas where they could be? Sohamji.
I would put it this way. The scientific approach, which also includes medication for mental health, I would say is more of a palliative care. The strength of medicine comes there. Whereas dharma, on the other hand, is more of a preventive care. And there are scenarios, both of us were discussing a little bit earlier before this session, that if somebody is going through a challenge where it tips off into medication, dharma can help only when the person is out of it. So in that way, they will complement. The scientific approach will make sure that if anybody is going through some extreme situation, they are brought to a point where they can live a good life, they can live a confident, a happy life thereon. That is where both approaches complement. In terms of differences, I would say the difference also lies here, where dharma would say, if we learn certain techniques of managing our mind, that mind can be blissful without any kind of stress and strain. What those techniques are, that's a different discussion. But I'll focus on this question only about similarities and differences. More we can discuss later.
Yeah, thank you, Sohamji. I think there's something just innately very true about what you said, right? If you think of Hindu Dharma as a quest to seek the truth and understand the truth, then it has no quarrel with science, right? If you define science as a quest to observe and understand the world, right? So I think inevitably over time, clinical psychology ends up catching up to what our ancient wisdom has known for so long, and then just like kind of confirming and validating that. And so, of course, like anything, it is very impacted by who is providing it and how they're interpreting it. So I'm not saying that there aren't times in clinical psychology where you don't really see the heavy influence of the Western paradigm in which it was inculcated, or that you don't find therapists who don't have the cultural competence to understand that, like, okay, if you really understand psychology deeply, then you are equipping someone to tap into all their strength, and telling them to set, more boundaries with their mom or mother-in-law or whatever it is not actually what's indicated, but the therapist may not know that, right? So I'm not going to pretend that there aren't times when it feels like the practice of clinical psychology isn't aligned with what we need, but if you really look at like the research and the basis, then it always is, right? Because if you think of therapy as a place where people are given the space to understand themselves and understand themselves deeply, to see what the barriers are to get from where they are to who they want to be, then that's profoundly what our dharma pushes us to do as well, right? And so, like Sohamji said, of course, it ranges in being able to offer medication to those who are experiencing severe symptoms and experiences of psychopathology, but you also have ideally, right, a space within the mental health field to help you tap into the strength that your dharma gives you, the strength that your family gives you, the strength that your culture gives you, to figure out what your goals are for yourself and to meet them. Freud is probably one of the most famous psychologists of all time, psychiatrist, right? And he would say, the goal of psychology is to love and to work, to have meaningful relationships and to do something with their life. And so we should always feel like we can find the space where those two align, and us finding what we need.
That's great. Sohamji, can you maybe share a prominent example of someone you may have encountered, maybe a yuva who was able to effectively maybe apply a dharmic approach, something that maybe stands out to you?
Sure. This was from India. When I was visiting recently, our Swamiji there, he was sharing with me. There was a boy who was very good in his high school, went on to a good college in India, but somehow with friends, he got into video games. And it became such a obsessive thing for him that it affected his grades, almost to a point where he had to take a semester drop. He was unable to cope back, and parents also did not have much that they could do at that time. So they brought this boy to our Swamiji, and they were just having a casual conversation. What end of the day matters is pure love and genuine care for the other person. It does wonders than any advice that we can give. So this boy really connected with Swamiji. Then he called him a few more times. He said, "We have a lot of seva here. Come and do some seva." And eventually, his mind found a different direction to channelize his energy. And today he is one of the most active sevaks in that center. He has graduated from his university and one of the most loved sevaks by all our members. Somebody who is ready to do anything, available whenever you give them a task. The point is, that same boy could have sunk with the repetitive thoughts that were going on. It was just a matter of breaking that repetition. So in Sanatan Dharma, in our field, we find so many examples like this, where you don't know how religion is helping. You can't quantify it. Even seva that we do, we think we are doing it for others. But really speaking, we are the ones who are benefiting the most. So that is something that comes to mind as an example.
Kavita ji, any examples you want to share?
Yeah, such an incredible story. What being able to really reflect and understand ourselves in an environment supported by love can unlock. In a therapeutic context, I have a client who is in an inter-religious, interfaith relationship, and actually themselves are very connected to Dharma, but in navigating this relationship with their parents, has struggled, right? And has in these ways been told, "Oh, you're not a good Hindu for these things that you're doing." And that's taken a toll on their performance in their work, in their romantic relationship, and even their friendships, right? Because that's a really difficult thing to take in. And I think therapy has been profound in this case in talking about, like, what does that really, like, mean to you? Who do you want to be? And are you living the values that resonate with you in being a Hindu, in your work, in your relationship, in how you're navigating, whether you're having sex with this person, whether you're drinking, and whatever all it may be, genuinely, right? And getting to a place where they're really able to figure out, like, for themselves, again, who they want to be and what they want to embody, and understanding also how they can have conversations with their parents about what their parents are fearing and what their parents need reassurance about, by coming in with the lens of being able to understand their parents, has unlocked also the whole family's ability to really conversate and understand each other and understand how they want to move forward on this journey. And I think it's been remarkable to see my client feel more confident in themselves, which has allowed them to function better in so many domains of their life, which also means giving back to the community that they're in, which may not have been a stated goal, but ends up flowing from being the best version of yourself, right? And I think I obviously haven't met their family, but being able to understand that the shifts here have shifted their family dynamic and allowing them all to communicate better, understand each other better, and navigate difficult situations better has been really profound too.
Yeah, communication definitely holds a lot of power. So we are sitting in a room full of Hindu Yuvas. The big question, how? How can we incorporate these dharmic approaches in our lives? How do we do it?
This might be a little longer answer. Whole of spirituality is to answer this question. What can we do such that our mind becomes beautiful? So I'll share a few perspectives based on Bhagavad Gita. I'll not quote the verses, but it is all based on those texts. First one, Bhagavan Krishna says, it's as though all of us are living, having drawn a circle around us. We have people use this in conversation also, right? Inner circle. Inner circle means what? My close people, close friends. The first dharmic practice is to draw bigger and bigger circles. Meaning what? Embracing more and more of the people around us. That is the first dharmic practice for a beautiful mind. I liked how Jaiminji started today. He said, look at the one on your left, look at the one on your right. If they matter, this whole organization will eventually matter. How many of you have seen the redwoods in northern Mendocino or northern part of California, Mendocino County? How tall are the redwoods? Roughly 300 feet or more. Do you know how old are the redwoods? 2,000 years. The redwoods in Mendocino are 2,000 years. There is a nice board there which says it represents a different era. You see it, it will leave an impression on your mind. The reason I shared this is, if that tree is 300 foot tall, how deep are its roots? How deep do you think is the root of that redwood? How many of you say more than 50 feet? Okay. It's hardly a few meters. The way that these redwoods survive, they create a mesh between each tree. And if one tree is running low on nutrients, it will ask from the other tree to supply. And this is one of the best examples of karma yoga. If I need a beautiful mind, I have to learn the art of making somebody else happy. If I want to be happy, at least one person per day, I should strive to make that person happy. This is the first dharmic perspective of how to have a beautiful mind. No person is an island. We live with whatever group of people we are blessed with, understanding a way of how to build bridges with each other. Second technique is called as upasana, which is meditating upon God. We become sorrowful when we forget our connection with our Creator. That Bhagwan who is our Creator, the moment we have lost connection with Him, this mind becomes a very tiny little mind. So this is an elaborate topic, but I'll just mention in brief. It's a meditation technique in our Vedas, which is called as upasana. You meditate upon nature as God. Take any altar. In olden days, they would take nature as the altar. You meditate upon sea as God, mountain as God, sun as God. And if we have an Ishta Devata, God whom we love, it makes that meditation sweeter. In all the Vedas, which is so voluminous, 96% of Vedas talk about upasanas and different karmas. And the direct result of upasana is a beautiful mind. So you can imagine the importance given to this kind of meditation on God. This morning, Puja Swamiji mentioned about prayer. It's a similar echo of prayer. So if you're doing the prayer, it's not something new that we have to do, but just start building a bond with our Creator. Last one is a very practical one. One dharmic approach is having good family bonding and values. That's a cushion for our mind. Whenever we share things with our parents, with our siblings, with our cousins, we don't know, or sometimes we don't appreciate how much of cushioning we are getting for this mind through those bonds. So that's an integral part of our Hindu culture, integral part of our Sanatana Dharma, where family bondings, in the midst of all different personalities, we make sure that we stay together, and that is another very good qualification.
Thank you, Sohamji. As you were speaking, I couldn't help but think about the example you gave and drawing parallels to why we are here. So as you were saying dharmic approaches, I was thinking of Sankalp. When you were thinking of redwood trees, I was thinking of how each of our chapters in all of our regions are redwood trees, and how our roots are actually strengthening each other. And being present here is actually a dharmic practice in itself, connecting with each other, heart to heart, supporting each other. Being here itself is a mental health practice. Yeah. Kavita ji.
1000%. Yeah, this is like such a profoundly beautiful thing you can do for yourselves and for each other, to be here in community and to understand, you know, what Dharma has long known is that we thrive when we are connected to one another. We thrive when we are in community. And there's just so much in our Dharma that we can tap into, that psychology and science will say, like, oh yeah, that's great, like, do puja, because you use every one of your senses, whether it's tasting the prasad or feeling the heat of the diya or smelling the incense, to be able to ground yourself in this moment, right? And anytime that you are really present in prayer, you don't have the depression that comes with thoughts of the past, and you don't have the anxiety that comes with the thoughts of the future, right? So like, take that in and know that, and remember that like the diet you take in isn't just like what you're literally eating and consuming, but who you're surrounding yourself with, like what type of thought, what type of spirituality is around you. And that's a profound part of taking care of yourself in this day and age as you go forward. And that you have more tools at your disposal than any generation before you, even though you have challenges unlike any generation before you too. So, you know, Hindu Dharma is so beautiful because you can bring that into a session with the therapist if you choose to. There's, you know, a lot of stigma against that, but there's no reason to think that that can't be a part of your journey of just being the very best version of yourself too.
Beautiful. You mentioned puja. I think this is a great segue. Shout out to our Vivekananda homes and all of our Hindu Yuva events. Maybe you can talk a little bit more, Sohamji, about how our dharmic presence on campus is impacting our youth and how it can support them.
Yes. University life is very niche phase in our life, where the needs are very different, very special. Somebody who is working is out of that phase, so it's a different context for them. I feel university presence has to be done at multiple levels. One is our personal sadhana, which doesn't have any dependency on anybody else. So simple practices like Gayatri Japa. Gayatri Japa is something, it is told, it is the power of Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya, simple definition is student. In student life, the support, the strength of that student is Gayatri Mantra. In fact, there is an anecdote about Parshuramji and Bhishma. They are standing opposed to each other. How many of you are familiar with Mahabharata? You all know this episode, Parshuramji and Bhishma. After Amba's episode comes, Amba goes and complains to Parshuramji, who is the guru of Bhishma. Both of them are standing against each other for a battle. And Bhishma was part of the royal family, came on a chariot. Parshuramji is standing barefoot on the ground. Bhishma says, "Can I get a chariot for you? So that at least both of us stand on the chariot and fight." Parshuramji says, "Don't worry, chariot of a Brahmana is Gayatri. I am very well protected by that mantra. No need for any additional chariot." So that is the greatness of Gayatri. Many of you must be familiar with Ramaraksha Stotra. What is the other name for Ramaraksha Stotra? Ramraksha Kavacham. Kavacham means a shield. Having chanted which, a shield is formed around our mind. Those are these stotrams. So something should be there which I am doing every day, regularly. It might be a short prayer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, doesn't matter. But every single day, I seek shelter in that prayer. Then as a group, whenever we are able to do, I was very happy Hindu YUVA does so many festivals on campuses. Trying to make sure we put forth some effort into celebrating them in a traditional way. Recently, one of our Balvihar graduate, he was in Stanford. He said, "This Diwali puja that we do, I want to do Shodashopachara puja, 16 steps puja. Can you give the steps?" And I sat down with him, went over the steps. And it was such a joy to see all the children, I mean, they're not children, all young adults, do the Shodashopachara puja as part of their Diwali celebration. So things like that bring a lot of meaning and efficacy.
Beautiful. So what I'm gathering from both of you is quality connections, samajik karya, community work, traditional, authentic celebrations, taking care of your diet, taking care of your holistic health. I'm wondering, now that we've discussed many of these things, are there any key resources or something that our yuvas can maybe look forward to learning more about or, leaning into?
Yeah, I mean, the Vivekanand houses in and of themselves are amazing. This conference is amazing. Having each other is amazing. And we are actively working on continuing to equip you with everything you need, right? So at the Hindu American Foundation, we just released a guide on mental health and substance use, and I'll have some copies of it at the HAF table if you want to come find me there to check it out. But we need your feedback on what else would be helpful. So please, come share with us what you need. But we're gonna keep trying to make those things and give you the resources and start these conversations and have them with your parents too, in terms of how to make sure that a Hindu experience is one that is just psychologically sound for you on campus.
I really appreciate the candidness, because the fact of the matter is campus reality, especially in US and Canada, is we are facing things like this. Substance use, different challenges with different relations. I know many of our yuvas have even faced Hindu phobia on campus. So a guide like this that's very practical and real is very much appreciated. Yeah. Sohamji, any resources?
Resource-wise, I was very happy to hear many of your Hindu Yuva chapters are also having a study circle where you pick some spiritual topic to discuss. I feel this satsang is very important if we need new perspectives. Our mind otherwise keeps going in the same loops, same ideas keep coming back. It's like a water fountain, you know. Unless you replenish the water, the same water keeps getting circulated. So some good text for youth, if you want to take it up as study. Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, chapter 12, and chapter 18. Chapter 3, chapter 12, chapter 18, very, very practical advice that will help any seeker, but in particular, university student. Then there is a text called as Shiva Sankalpa Suktam. Shiva Sankalpa Suktam. How to beautify the mind. Tanme manaha Shiva Sankalpam astu. Every verse ends with that refrain. So that's a very good text for mind. Even if you chant that prayer, it hardly takes 2 minutes. It's a powerful chant just to keep the mind calm and peaceful. And if you are devotional, then there are texts in Ramcharitmanas. How many of you have heard the word Ramcharitmanas before? Wonderful. I have a very good audience here. Ramcharitmanas has one portion called as Vibhishana Gita, where Lord Rama is telling Vibhishanji what is a chariot of dharma. Sauraja dhiraja tehirata chaka. Courage and fortitude means one part of our life is facing situations head on, another part is slowing down. Like that it goes on, but it's a beautiful text, Vibhishana Gita. So these three resources, Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, 12, 18, then Shiva Sankalpa Suktam, third one is Vibhishana Gita.
Thank you both for the resources. And with that, we'd like to conclude this plenary. We are very lucky to have both of you here today to have this beautiful, fruitful discussion. And I can firsthand say we have very approachable experts with us. So feel free to please come up and speak to Soham ji, Kavita ji. They've got lots of experience and they'd love to connect with all of you. But thank you both for all of your contributions.
Thank you.
Facilitate our guests.